Before we get started, just want to quickly welcome you and introduce our speaker today. His name is Steve Boderck. He's the VP of Global Business Development, and he will be sharing some insights for Crowdz and some tips for businesses during these challenging times. So I will hand it over to you now, Steve. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Clay, and welcome everyone to the Crowdz Invoice Exchange webinar. Let me go through a couple of points just before we start. If you have questions, please post them in the chat and we'll answer them at the end. We'll have plenty of time for Q&A. So please do that. And then let's go through just a quick agenda just to let you know what we're going to cover today. I'll do a quick introduction to Crowdz. I have a few slides that I want to share with everyone just so I can frame what the demo looks like. It'll go through a little bit more about what problem we're solving both today, especially today in our current economy, and for recovery as we come out of this economy. And then I'll get into the demo, and then we'll have Q&A. And at the end, we'll describe our Amazon $50 gift card giveaway. So just a brief introduction to Crowdz. We were founded in 2014, and we also were in the midst of a crisis when Crowdz was founded. There was a supply chain crisis from some weather incidents in Southeast Asia, which gave our co-founder, Payson Johnson, a view towards how some companies did not have access to working capital as most large companies do. So he was part of a task force to help small, medium businesses get back on their feet. And that's where the concept of Crowdz began. We're Series A funded. We have 13 team members in Silicon Valley, both and also on the East and West Coast of the United States, and also in London. And you know, the real message that we're trying to achieve and what we're trying to do in the marketplace is we're providing invoice financing opportunities to companies in global supply chains. And these can be, you know, automotive, industrial, electronics, apparel, food and beverage. There's a number of markets that have massive global supply chains. And this is a market that a lot of SMBs, small, medium businesses, traditionally have been excluded from, given the nature of financing. So the need for financing is greater than ever, especially in our current economy. 90% of all supply chain participants are small, medium businesses, half of which suffer cash flow shortages as they wait 90 to 120 days or more to get paid. So our global invoice auction helps this problem by directing competitive and low-cost financing to these small and medium businesses, while offering, you know, really good returns to funders that are seeking a better investment model. So in our current economy, you know, we have two definite needs. One is that sellers or manufacturers of products definitely need to get access to cash quickly. We're seeing a lot of this crop up, especially small and medium enterprise businesses across the United States and globally. So they need to get access to cash and improve their cash flow, while buyers or the end customers that are receiving these goods need to push out payment terms for the same reason. You know, they need to preserve their working capital to make sure that they can move forward and get out of this current economy. So we offer a solution to sell invoices for cash. Now, in the platform itself, I want to just go through how it works so that you can understand from a visual perspective what we're going to see in the demo. If you follow my mouse, we have the ability to upload or even create invoices on the platform itself. And we can upload from a number of sources, simple things like PDF, email, Excel, or integrated to accounting platforms such as Xero or QuickBooks Online or Sage. Once invoices are uploaded into the auction or onto the platform, they can be posted into the auction, and eventually funders will bid on those invoices for an acceptable price, and that's when the invoice has been won. We also have a smart score, which is the way that we risk profile not only the sellers or the people that are posting the invoices, but the invoice themselves and the buyers, to make sure that the funders have the best opportunity to fund and bid on these invoices. A better SMART score allows sellers a better rate for the funding of their invoice. The funds get added into the platform either through banks or SWIFT or even credit card accounts, and they can also be withdrawn through ACH or other methods directly linked to your bank accounts. We also have a mobile version of this application that'll come out in the late May timeframe. The platform is built on top of Ethereum's blockchain, and I only mention this for two specific reasons. One is that the blockchain allows us to follow all the transactions, so the uploading of an invoice, the movement of that invoice, the bidding, and the funding. Eventually, as we get into more or a tokenization of this model, the smart contract within the blockchain will start to record those transactions as well. And our marketplace is built on AWS, Amazon Web Services. We're an API marketplace so that it can be joined if we want to have a white label or a partnership with either banks or enterprise companies. There is an opportunity to have a white label set up or just be an API call. Okay, so that's what I wanted to accomplish, just to introduce the platform. And now let me get into the demo. Okay, so I am currently in the seller's dashboard. And if you notice on the dashboard, we have a number of areas. In the wallet, we can manage the financial accounts. We can move money in or out. And we also have what's shown here is the SMART score, which, as I mentioned, is Crowd's way of risk profiling companies and invoices. So we see we have a balance in our account. And over on the left panel, we have a number of panels to click on. Activity of the account, the wallet, contacts, and settings. For our demo purposes, we're going to look at the invoices tab, which shows all of the invoices that have been uploaded and sent to auction and funded. So here we have the option to add an invoice. Now we can create an invoice from scratch, and Crowdz will have that invoice displayed, and then you can send it into the auction, or we can look up an invoice from a recent buyer that is already loaded in the system. So here I have LAN Networking Inc. that was loaded, and I can look at the company details that get populated. So I'm going to load an invoice directly from my computer as an upload, which is one of the options for uploading invoices. And if I look into my folder of invoices, I have this invoice number 701, and I'll upload it, and I can view to make sure that this is the invoice that I want to send, and it is. So this invoice is from Tech Components, which is the seller, to LAN Networking Inc., and it's for components in the amount of $50,000. Now I have the screen to capture the date of the invoice and when I want the invoice due. So let's make it 30 days out of term, and then I enter the amount of the invoice. And I can also enter in a discount if I choose to give a 2 or 5% net discount if paid early. And I also have the ability to add PO information, as some buyers require that. So if I'm satisfied with the input, I then upload the invoice. And we can go to the invoice tab and see that that invoice has been successfully uploaded. And if I want to, I can make sure that it's what I've inputted into the system. I can look at the invoice as well from this tab to make sure that this is what I want. And so if I'm satisfied with all of these details, then I post this for sale. And here's where we choose the public auction, which is going to allow multiple funders to bid on this invoice. So the first action is to put in when I want this invoice to close. So let's say I want this to be a fairly tight window. I'll choose May 1st as the closing time, or closing date rather. I can also choose a closing time, let's say at 12 noon, but I won't do that for this instance. I now have the ability to set the maximum discount that I want on this invoice. So I can input a percentage, or I can have the system choose a default. So for this invoice, I'm going to choose 5% discount, which is $2,500 off the $50,000. So I'm satisfied with all the inputs, and I'll post this for sale. And now let's go over and look at the auctions tab to make sure that that was indeed posted, and it has been, and I can withdraw if I choose to, or look at the parameters of this auction. So it's auctioned off and we're ready to go, and the due date for the invoice in its term is still May 27th. So now let's go to a funder tab and look at their dashboard. So very much the same as the seller's dashboard, but their main interest is the auction and bidding on invoices. So if I click on the auctions tab, I'll note that there is the invoice that we just uploaded. We have 2 days left on the auction cycle, and I can also look at the details of the actual invoice, pull up the invoice itself to make sure it's something that I'm interested in. And if I choose that I want to place the bid, I choose the bid now screen, and it pops open this window. So now I have the ability to enter in a bid amount. So I will enter in 5%. Oh, actually, let's enter in 6%, and I'll show you what the system does. It's going to say that it's higher than the amount that the seller has stated. So I'll come back and adjust that to a 5% bid, and I'll set the bid, and we're done with that bid. I can withdraw that bid if I'd like to, and I can view other bids as the auction proceeds. But let's go back to the seller's dashboard and look at the bids that have just come in. So here's the bid that came in from GDP funding, and they see it's a 5% bid. The seller at this point can choose to accept the bid or wait because there's 2 more days, roughly a little bit more than 2 days left on the auction window. So they choose to wait and see other bids that come in. So if we then go to the second funder's dashboard, go to the auctions tab, we'll see that that bid, or that invoice rather, is posted here as well. They can look at the bids that have been placed, and they see a bid for 5%, and they choose to place a bid. And because they've done business with Tech Components before, they're actually going to bid a little bit lower and see if they can win. So they'll place the bid at 4%, submit it, and again, they can withdraw if they choose to. Now let's go back to the seller's dashboard, and let's look at the bids that have come in. So let's say if we're at the end of the term of this auction window, we have 2 really good bids. In this case, we choose SEC Capital because we've done business with them before, and they also gave us a better discount, a lower discount, which gives us more money. So we choose to accept the bid, and it gives us the terms of what we're accepting and who it's going to. And that bid has been accepted. Now, if I go over to the seller's dashboard and I refresh the screen, we're going to see that in the auction, our bid has been accepted. We'll get an alert if we choose to set that up, that our bid has been accepted. So here we have the option to fund this invoice, and we'll choose their account. We'll put it through the Crowdz platform, and we'll confirm and fund for $48,000. So the money has been moved successfully. And if we look at the funder's account activity, we'll note that $48,000 in fact did leave our account, and it went to Tech Components, who's the invoice owner. So now let's go back to Tech Components dashboard, and let's look at their account activity. And indeed, we did see that they received $48,000 from SEC Capital. So that's all that has to be done for the seller, and this can be done in as little as a day, or again, if they put the auction window at 3 to 5 days, they can wait for as many bids as they choose and select the one that best fits their situation. Now, in 30 days, when that invoice is due, the buyer, LAN Networking, will pay that invoice, and then in turn, Tech Components will pay back the funder in the full face value of the invoice at $50,000. The only thing I want to show is we have a journey tab, which tells you what happened all along the way and captured. And this is what we'll eventually capture in the blockchain as well. So it denotes the immutable ledger of steps from the start of loading the invoice all the way to the funding of the invoice. So with that, I'm going to pause and stop the demo, and we'll open the chat line for questions. And I want to thank you for watching the demo. There's no, you can load as many as you have. You know, we can, as we mentioned, we can upload from an accounting package, and you can choose a portfolio of invoices to load, or you can do them one at a time through, as I mentioned, email or PDF or Excel uploads. Another question come in, how much does it cost to upload invoices? There is no cost to upload invoices. So for the seller, there is no cost to the invoice upload. And the funding is where the currency and revenue come from for the platform, but there's no cost for the seller. So here's a statement. There's someone asking if that they have 3 invoices currently showing unsold, and when the funds are expected. So they have to be sold through a funder directly, and then funds would be expected. So you can either extend the auction window of those invoices, so the seller or the funder has an opportunity to bid on them, or you can take them down.
Steve, also, what are the typical rates for invoice financing?
Yeah, it's a good question. So what we find is that rates that funders are coming in to larger invoices can be anywhere from 2% to 8% as far as a raw discount. Obviously, for them, what the funder gets is their rate of return on a 30 or 45-day window is very appetizing, so and very suitable for what they're looking for. But the goal here is to get the best rate possible for invoices loaded, and that's why the best smart score or risk profile will allow the best rates. So another question, can you explain the process for the supplier invoice payment a bit more? Does the seller collect and then transfer through Crowdz to the funder? Yes, that is correct. We right now have a process where the funder is directly giving the funds, the bidding fund amount to the seller. And then when the seller gets the payment from the buyer, they'll reconcile with the funder. Eventually, there'll be an automated system where that will all take place. But for now, it's a manual transaction that gets occurred through the funder and seller agreements that would be put in place. Another question is, what's the value proposition? So in our current economy, it's very clear that there's a need for small and medium businesses to survive through what we're dealing with today. But there's also the opportunity for them to get some assistance in recovery. And that could be, 2, 3, 4 months down and for another year after that. So if you can imagine, as the businesses start to turn on, there's going to be a need for parts to come into manufacturing. And if companies are still not cash positive and need cash, they're going to need that funding also for their raw materials to manufacture. So not only is this an opportunity to help what's happening with our governments, in the US and abroad, but it's another opportunity to help small and medium businesses funding today, but then also in recovery as we come out of this current economy. Another question that came in, is there a minimum invoice amount? There isn't, although, obviously a $5 invoice won't be attractive to a funder. So, we've seen invoices come in as low as, $150, $200. So there really is no minimum, but again, you're putting this into a public auction. So funders need to see that there's opportunity for them to get some return. So another question came in, how do I sign up? So we have a registration process. If you go to the Crowdz website, you'll see that there's a opportunity to sign up onto the platform. There's a number of registration steps, and we have a chat that can help you through those. You can also talk to a live sales representative to help with your onboarding, and there is no cost to sign up. Another question about bundling smaller invoices. We will have an opportunity in our next version of the platform to bundle. So if there's multiple sellers that want to be part of a bundle that a funder may want to fund, that capability will be available. And so then it allows for a number of invoices to be grouped, as some funders may want a greater fund a greater invoice package to bid on to get a better return. Another great question, what advantages does the Crowdz auction have over typical factoring? In the past, traditional invoice factoring has had very, very large discount rates, sometimes as much as 30%. We're looking at a different model in that we have funders that are coming in looking at new funding and new investment opportunities, and the rates that they need to fund are much lower to get the rate of return that they would like on their portfolio. So not only will our funders have the ability to bid at a lower price than traditional factoring, but the model that we've set up will have many funders and many opportunities to get better rates. So while we're waiting for a few more questions to come in, I'll just announce that we're going to be doing a drawing for an Amazon gift card for $50. So all that's needed is your email that is in your registration for this webinar, and we will randomly choose one of those and let the winner know how they receive their $50 gift card. Great. Well, if there's no more questions, I wanted to thank everyone for joining the webinar. I hope that you've been able to see what Crowdz is able to do in today's economy with our platform to help small, medium enterprise businesses, and how we can transfer this whole platform into a recovery model as we come out of the COVID-19 situation. Thanks again, everyone, for joining. Please take care, and hope to talk to you soon. Bye-bye.